Let's begin this way. I'd like to begin by introducing my family. I'd like to talk about our family. Some of you have seen them, some of you have not. But we like to do this because it reminds us every time we speak about family that it's not some theoretical, philosophical thing. It's a real thing. We have 2 children. Of course, Elaine and I have been married for 33 years. It's going to be 34 years in August 26. I still remember it very clearly, vividly. I was a young pastor in New York City when I married Elaine. I was youth pastor of the largest church of the conference, Greater New York Conference in New York City, and I was also the senior pastor of a smaller church that was a part of that district. Elaine was in her last year of university when we courted, when we were courting. And I think it's a good way for a young pastor to court with his girlfriend 200 miles away. And so the entire time we courted, she was away. And she would come to New York City maybe every other weekend to check on the young pastor. And of course, her mother lived in New York City, so that was pretty simple. And 34 years in August since we've been married. The Lord has blessed us with 2 children. Our daughter, Jessica. In fact, even until late last night, Elaine was communicating with Jessica. Jessica is a public health educator who right now works for the youth department of the General Conference. Her master's is in public health. So she's a graduate of Andrews University and Loma Linda University. Julian is a civil and environmental engineer. He currently works as a civil engineer in the Washington, D.C. area. As you know, some of you have heard, Jessica is getting married in September. And many of the projects right now Elaine is working on is getting ready for that wedding. There's so many details. You hear about the royal wedding that's taking place this tomorrow? Well, we don't have as much money as the royal family, so the details are not as extravagant, but there are lots of details, and I try to stay out of them. When Elaine asked me a question, I said, "Whatever you say, my darling, whatever you say." That way we keep it simple. Julian is not married yet, and now he's feeling a little pressure since his sister is getting married, but he's 3 years younger than Jessica, so he thinks he has time. But that's our family. It's not a perfect family. Our family is just like your family. We're a human family. We say to people, there are no perfect families because there are no perfect people. But God does expect something of us. And that is commitment, that is a commitment to grow, a commitment to learn, a commitment to be committed, a commitment to doing what God wants us to do. And that's something that we have to do every day. That's a decision that we make every day. So I'd like to begin with this quotation from Ellen White in the book Education that you're very familiar with. And of course, we've added a little bit there to include everyone. The greatest one of the world is the one of men and women. Because if Ellen White had written today, she would say men and women. Men and women who will not be bought or sold. Men and women who are in their inmost souls are true and honest. Men and women who do not fear to call sin by its right name. Men and women whose conscience is as true to duty as the needle to the pole. Men and women who stand for the right, though the heavens fall. That's a big, tall order for everyone, but especially for us as Christian leaders. In a world that's so filled with corruption at every level, this is a reminder that the only way to please God, the only way to have a family life that is significant, is to be committed every day, as God's mercies are new every day, to to being men and women of integrity. If Elaine were here, she would probably want me to do an exercise with you, and let's try it. Let me get my bearings so that it can work and that it means something. Okay. All right. Let's try it. Let's see. Okay. Let's try it. We're talking about principles. And there's a point about principle that I'm making. And that point is, do this exercise with me. Raise your hand. There's no trick, just raise your hand. And then I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. And when I say 3, you're going to point north, okay? Don't look at anyone else, just you. Close your eyes. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, point. All right, keep pointing, keep pointing. Don't pay attention to anybody else. I see you're pointing that way. No, you can open your eyes, but just keep pointing, keep pointing, keep pointing. Because don't change your point. Don't change your point. Just keep pointing. I want to, let's see, take a picture so we know where you're pointing. Okay. Thank you. You see how you're pointing in different directions. You're pointing in different directions. And north is, it's like right over there. Okay, right over there. Dr. Stephen Covey, many of you are aware of him and his work on the 7 habits of highly effective people. It was his doctoral dissertation that became a very huge bestseller that has spun off into the 7 habits of highly effective families, the 7 habits of highly effective managers, and Elaine and I are both trained in the 7 habits by Dr. John Covey, Dr. Stephen Covey's brother. And in fact, what is this, 2018, 13 years ago, Dr. Stephen Covey came and spoke at a North American Division conference on our invitation. Because at that time we were in the North American Division, and my vice president, she said to us, all the ministry leaders, the vice president, Deborah Brill, she still is the vice president. In fact, the longest serving vice president in the North American Division is Deborah Brill. She's the vice president for ministries, and she's been there since 1999. Next year is going to be 20 years that she's vice president in the North American Division. And she says, we want someone with a big name. We want something fresh. We want something big. We want something that will challenge us. And we said, you want Stephen Covey. You know, he's world renowned. She says, well, who knows him? I said, well, we know his brother. We were trained by his brother. And so we have an entree. She said, okay, so we got him. And Dr. Covey, they're Mormons. They're not Adventists, they're Mormons, they're Christians. And while he has presented this for industry, it feels very spiritual because it is. He calls it true north principles. That's why I made you do that exercise. True north. North never changes. It's always in the same place. It's a metaphor for God. Here's the deal. There are all kinds of philosophies in the world. All kinds of philosophies. And as we've mentioned this week, one of the prevailing common things to say by people in the world, powerful people, influential people, and university students and professors and people in general, they say, I have to live my truth. You've heard that. If you know Oprah Winfrey, she talks about her truth. This is the ultimate postmodernist notion, which is anything goes. It's your truth, it's your truth, it's your truth, Stephanie, it's your truth. It's my truth. There's only one truth. God is the truth. He is true north. So when Ellen White is speaking, and I said to Dr. Covey when he came, and it was interesting when he came because he was one of the keynote speakers, and also Dr. Barry Black, who is chaplain of the U.S. Senate, who is a Seventh-day Adventist, as you know, was also speaking at the conference. And he and his wife are good friends of ours. And when they heard Dr. Covey was coming, Brenda Black, who's good friends with Elaine, says, and he was speaking for the breakfast forum. She says, oh, I love Dr. Covey. I love to read his books. And I said, sit with us at the table with him for breakfast. And so we did. And we were talking with Dr. Covey about his true north principles. And I said to him, you know, the prophet of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Ellen White, about 100 years ago, she said this, the greatest one of the world. And I quoted to him. I said, before you came up with this true north principles, we had it. He says, send me that book. So I did. He's dead now. He died a few years ago of an accident. He fell off a bike when he was on vacation. He's dead. But the reason I'm speaking to you about true north principles is because I want you, if you don't remember anything else, remember this. If we're going to be Christian leaders of any worth, we have to put first things first. And those are based on principles. And those principles are based on the Word of God and on a relationship with God. It doesn't work any other way. So I go through principles and values. Principles are universal laws of fundamental truths which exist independent of our knowledge or acceptance of them. You don't have to believe in gravity, but it exists. People say, oh, I don't believe in God. We were just in Serbia. I said that, I think, 2 nights ago. We were in Serbia 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, in the city of Niš, where Constantine the Great was born. And Elaine was not able to join me for that because her foot was in real trouble. And she wasn't able to join me until the following week for the second series we did in Serbia. And in that first week, as I was speaking, and this is a very secular place. Europe is very secular. It's not like Africa. Everyone is spiritual. You know, everyone has an affinity for the divine. Not in Europe. And at the end of one of my presentations, I ran into a young man, a university student, who was there with an Adventist university student, apparently a girl he liked. And he told me he didn't believe in God. And of course, I'm a trained sociologist, so I'm a trained humanist. And I said to him, that's okay. I said, it's okay. He says, does that make me a bad person? I said, no, of course not. I said, you just have not yet gotten to an experience with God. And that's all right. I said, you know, it's like gravity. You don't have to believe in it, but it exists. So you don't have to believe in God. And I told him a story about the young man who'd gone to university and came home and told his mother he didn't believe in God anymore, even though he'd been raised in the church. He says, where is God? Show him to me. And she says, well, you know, you can't see God. But he says, how do you know God exists? And she says, because I experience him every day. He gives me peace. I can sense his presence. He says, that doesn't make any sense. Then one night, he woke up kind of screaming, kind of crying out to his mother, Mom! And she came up. It was in the middle of the night. And she said, what's the matter? He says, I have a toothache. And the mother says, where is it? And he says, right here. She says, where? I don't see it. And he said, Mom, quit fooling around. You know you can't see a toothache, but I know it exists because I feel the pain. And she says, that's how I know God. Don't see him, but he exists. You have to experience him to know that he exists. So I said to the young man, and then the following night I spoke about gravity, and people say, when you ask, who invented gravity? People invariably say, Isaac Newton. No, he didn't. He discovered it. He was able to explain what was happening, but he didn't invent it. It was there from the beginning of time. God created it as part of the reality of keeping the world together and the universe. Gravity, that's God's invention. I mentioned the name of, I said, because I told him, it's okay. I said, I'm a sociologist. I have lots of friends who went to the PhD program with me who don't believe in God. They're my friends. I eat with them. I talk with them. And I share with them my experience. You won't know until you experience it for yourself. And it's okay. Or be patient. And it's all right. God loves everyone. He was smart enough to say, I can't say there is no God, but I have no evidence. And I'm a scientist. I say I understand. I'm a social scientist as well. I understand all about evidence. Okay? So I said, the man who said he didn't believe in gravity went to the 10th floor of a building and leaned over, came off the building, and guess what? Gravity worked. He didn't believe in it, but it worked. He didn't live to tell it because he was dead by the time he got to the bottom, but it works. We need to be certain that what we believe in is true because we've experienced it. Ellen White says, people who will stand for the right, though the heavens fall. We live in a time when people are not standing for the right. We were just on the way here speaking with Pastor Gai about all the corruption in Kenya and why certain roads have not been built because the money was given and then someone took the money and did something else with it. And the challenge today is that even in Christian circles, even in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we need to be careful that we are leaders of integrity, leaders who are principle-centered. So principles are universal laws of fundamental truths which exist independently of our knowledge or acceptance of them. I'm thinking about, as we are raising our children, there are things that we'd be taking them to school and we'll start talking to them about, and then they would say, oh, or they now learn something in school, and they would say to us something like, oh, how do you know that? Okay, we're only umpteen years older than they are. You know, we've been around for a long time. We went to school, we're their parents. They just learned it in school today, and they're asking, how do we know that? And I say, just because you don't know it exists doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So that's how principles work. And then, of course, values are the worth or priority we place on people, things, and principles. What is important to us constitutes our values. So you need to ask yourself, what are your values as Seventh-day Adventists? Let me hurry on since you have many other things to do today. 1 Timothy 5:8, this is Paul writing to Timothy, and he says, but if anyone does not provide for his own, and especially for his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than a non-believer. I'm going someplace with this. I didn't just talk about values and principles and told you these stories for no reason. I'm going someplace with this, and it's about your families. It's not theoretical. It's about your families and how you operationalize the truths of God's word. Here is Paul speaking to Timothy, and if you look at the context, it's a place filled with philosophy. At this time, Paul is working in Southeast Europe, Southern Europe. This is around the time when he'd gotten the call to Macedonia, and by the way, I mentioned it the other day that I was in Macedonia, right when we were in Serbia. They took us to Macedonia. Elaine wasn't there that week. They took me to Macedonia. The president of the union, Elder George Trajkovski, took me and his wife. He's from Macedonia, so they wanted me to visit Macedonia. It's where Paul came. And when he wrote the book of the Philippians, he wrote it to the Philippians. The city of Philippi is right north of Skopje, which is the capital city of Macedonia. And right around that time, Paul is writing to Timothy. And the place is filled with philosophers and pagans. And Paul is saying, but if anyone does not provide for his own, especially for his household, He has denied the faith and is worse than all these pagans here who actually don't believe in our God, but provide for their family members. That's what Paul is saying. So he is juxtaposing, he's comparing the household of God and what makes us the household of God. What makes us different than the others? What makes us different than the others? What makes us different from those who are involved in traditional African religions? Okay? This is an important one for Adventist workers, balancing work and family. Let me do it quickly. Work, employment is changing. 3 years ago, I was here, and Dr. Misiani was just come back to the Union from South Africa. Of course, I met him 11 years ago, 2007, when Elaine and I did a week of prayer and a family conference on the campus of ECD. 2007, when Elder Mbwana was president of the division. So now you're here. And now 3 years ago when I came, you just come. And now I'm here, and now you're president. See, work, employment is always changing. Always changing. The demands, always to do more with less. And leadership is challenged with that. Because leadership, there's always someone else above you, and they're always expecting you to do more with less. You know, and to solve all the problems. Those are the demands. The boss, external expectations and measurable accountability. We have a session every 5 years for the union, every 5 years for the general conference. And then they evaluate, you know, whether or not you accomplished what the organization needed you to accomplish. There are expectations. You know, I'm not just out here shooting the breeze. You know, I was elected by the World Church to service the World Church and to help you to come to grips with family issues that are of eternal value, so that the church will be a place of more integrity, stronger, healthier. That's what I've been elected to do. In 2 years, they're going to decide whether or not I've done enough, or if they need someone else to give a different emphasis. These are all a part of what happens in work. And then the company, the group, heavy expectations, measurable performance. And when I get back, I have to file a report. I have to say what I did, what I spent. See how it works? I'm not just out here shooting the breeze, and that's true for you as well. And then this is what happens on the family side. Family, relationships are permanent. Relationships are permanent. Work is always changing. I need you to keep this in mind. 3 years ago, I met Pastor Tuwe, and he was in Eldoret. He wasn't here. Now he's here, right? But the same wife. Whoa, that's not his wife. Sister Tuwe, that's still, how many years? 29 years? 29 years. How many? 29. Yes, 29. That's what I remember. So, Elaine has been my wife for 33 years, almost 34, and I expect her to be my wife until I die. My children, Jessica and Julian, will always be my children. Whether or not they have an argument with me, whether they quarrel with me, whether they don't like what I say or what I do, or I don't like what they do, they're my children. I can't disown them. And you see, they look like us, like we spat them out. What are the demands? We're always running on empty. I have a picture at home. And now it's digital as well. And Elaine posts it every once in a while on a picture with me and our 2 children. And Julian is 2 years old, and Jessica is 5. And it's a picture of us in Central Park in New York City. I was youth director and family ministries director of the Greater New York Conference. And I was in the middle of the afternoon working on 100 projects, and I said to my assistant, you know, my small children are at home, and I'm going to snap my finger twice, and they're going to be 25 and 22. And they're not going to know their father. So I said, I have to go. So I said, I'll be back tomorrow. I went home, picked up my kids, took them to the park. And I have that picture. And indeed, I snapped my fingers twice, and they're 25 and 22. Some of you have small children. Some of you have older children. For those of you who have small children, you may still have a chance to implement this. You're always running on empty because there's always so much work to be done. And in ministry, there's always so much work to be done. And it never ends. But you have to put first things first. I need 2 hours and I only have 10 minutes or 5 minutes left, so let me finish this way. The boss, your internal expectations and self-accountability. In your family, no one is going to say you have to do it. I mean, your wife may yell at you a couple of times, or your kids, or your husband, but most of it is your internal expectation and self-accountability. I wish I had time to tell you, but I don't. I'll tell you this much. When I came to the North American Division, you know what? My kids were younger than that when I took that picture in Central Park, because when I came to the North American Division, my kids were 6 and 3. 6 and 3. And before I came to the division, I was at the Atlantic Union, and I made up my mind when I went to the Union that I could only be gone away from home so much. That I would not be gone away from my family more than 2 weekends out of the month. That's a decision I made when I went to the Union. When I was at the conference, Greater New York, it's New York City and the counties, you can get home every night from wherever meeting you have. Once you went to the Union and you were covering a bigger territory and several states, and we had Bermuda, the island of Bermuda, which is a different country. It's a part of the Atlantic Union. That was a part of my territory. I set these boundaries. Again, I can't tell you everything. It's just too much. The group is the marriage, family, child-raising responsibilities, often appear postponable. Since I've been here, you guys have been to so many committees. You're at the union level where you're filled with committees. Dr. Misiani was saying, oh, I have this board, I have this board, I have this other board. I saw him on Sunday, and then he was on his way to Eldoret, to Baraton, for a meeting here and meeting there and more meetings. And if you have small children, every day they're learning something new, and every day they're learning values and an understanding of the world. And if you're not there to help shape that, someone else is, because there's no vacuum in life. If you're a father and you're not there for your children to interact with you, somebody else is going to take your place. If you're a mother and you're not there to interact with your children, somebody else is going to take your place. If not the lady across the street or the man across the street or the teacher or social media, somebody's taking your place. Somebody is influencing. Somebody's passing on values. Talking about first things first. So here's what happens. This is a big issue. Wish I had more time to talk with you about it. It's unfortunate that I picked this topic on a time when we have so little time. But here's what happens. There's no peace, there's pressure, and there's stress. Because we're trying to keep this teeter-totter in balance. That is the challenge of the pastoral family. That's the challenge of the family in ministry. Doing for God and doing for our families. Nothing is going to change unless we shift our paradigm. And before I say that to you, I'll say this much. I'm here today in the Adventist church, in the ministry of the church, because my parents, my father who was a minister in this church, and my mother who also worked for the church, were not too busy trying to save everybody else and lose their children. It's happening a lot. I have lots of colleagues over the years. You have no idea what it's like at the General Conference. And the younger you get there, the more challenging. And it may seem like a nice thing. I say to people all the time who come to a General Conference, and up until last October, the North American Division was there as well. So I've been in the same building for the last almost 23 years. I came there when I was a little boy. Now I could be considered a musée. I said, this is not a place to come unless you're really connected to Jesus. If you come, you might lose yourself and lose your children. I'm here today because of a commitment of my parents to not be so busy saving everybody else that they lost their children. There are 5 kids in my family, all of us in the church. Praise God. I have an older brother. He's a general conference auditor. He was in Africa for 6 years, back in the late 80s, early 90s. 3 sisters, all in the church. The sister that followed me was a school principal, K through 12, for many years. My other sister, she's a dentist. She's married to a pastor, conference evangelist. And my youngest sister, she's a family therapist. She's married to a psychiatrist who was one of the elders of his church in Washington, D.C. It's not by chance. It's not by chance. So here's a basic change model. And this is my challenge to you, the leadership. I mean, most of you, well, not most of you, but many of you already have older, bigger children, and that's fine. But this is mostly for the young people who still have time to shift the paradigm. And it's never too late. It's never too late, you know. As long as there's life, there's hope. And this is one that's based on psychological models, but it's really based on biblical principles. And it goes like this. This is the basic change model. So you're going to have to see things differently. And I'm hoping that as I speak to you, you will begin to see things differently, to do things differently, to get a different result. We call it the see, do, get model. It's a basic change model. If you're going to shift the paradigm, and last night as Dr. Messiani was driving us home, he was sharing some fantastic vision for West Kenya Union and the expansion and the quantum leap of membership in West Kenya Union, and how you can grow the church if these little things happen. That's a basic change model. You have to see things differently. You know, the small group things that you were speaking about. You have to see things differently, to do things differently, to get a different result. For those of you who do strategic planning, this is a fantastic model. If you can get people to shift the paradigm by sharing a new vision with them so that they see something different, so that they can do something different, so that they can get a different result. And that needs to happen with our families, or we're going to lose our families. I don't want to get to heaven. I don't want to get to heaven. And by the way, one thing that I found gratifying, we were in Hawaii the last week of March doing one of these events. And the last Sabbath we were there, I was preaching, I was shaking hands at the door, and a woman came. Hawaii is a very tourist place. You know, it's paradise. Everyone in the world wants to go to Hawaii. We've been invited many times, and we almost never go because we don't have the time. We decided to go this time. And this woman greeted me at the door, and she said, "Your father baptized me in Belize." I must have been a little boy when my parents were missionaries in Belize. And she said, "Your father baptized me." All over the world, I run into people who say, "Your father baptized me." That's a wonderful thing. But when I get to heaven, and I know when my father gets to heaven, and he used to preach this when he was alive, he would say, "When I get to heaven, I want to see all of you. But more importantly, I want to see my wife." And he would call my mother by name. And he called my brother and me. That's why I'm here. I get emotional about this because we are losing the children of the church. We're losing the children of workers because we're so busy trying to save everybody else and losing our own children. Look at this. Look at this. This is a father, and he's speaking, and he's with the mother and the children. It says, I've called the family together to announce that because of inflation, I'm going to have to let 2 of you go. Well, it doesn't make sense, does it? Doesn't make sense. It's not a family model. It's not a family model. It's a capitalistic model. But we do this the way we do family. We do this. And this doesn't work. It doesn't work. Because this is not what we do when there's inflation. When there's inflation and we have less resources, we tighten our belts. We eat less because everybody needs to be fed. Yeah? So let me show you this little video on putting first things first and how it works. You may not hear it, but you could see it. I hope you get the picture, putting first things first. Many times we fill our lives, even us as workers, as ministers, we fill our lives with small rocks, things that are insignificant. And we forget the big rocks. Usually we like to ask people, what are the most important priorities in your life? What do you think? Number one. What would number one be? We're talking about values. What would number one priority be in your life? Your workers, your Adventists. What would number one be? Don't be afraid. Anybody? Who said? Time with God. Number one. Okay, time with God. What would number two be? Family. What would number three be? I didn't hear that. Work. Okay. Almost everywhere we go in the world, people do it that way. They say God, family, work. You don't have to raise your hand, but I'll ask you the question if that's the way you live your life with those priorities. And if you don't, it's time to put first things first. If you don't, it's time to start living based on your values and based on your principles. See? Because that's the only way we have a strong foundation and a strong organization and a strong church. When what we say we believe in is how we live our lives. I have a sermon titled The Disparity Between Intellect and Character. The thesis is exactly what I'm trying to share with you right now. What we say we believe in and what we do are not always compatible. That's character. That's integrity. And that's what the church needs from all of us. That's what God needs from all of us. And He especially needs it when it comes to family. I've had these conversations with Elder Wilson, with the church leadership, and say to them, all the things that we do in church are important, but And I'm not trying to position family ministries as the very top, but we can pick anything that we do in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Pick anything. And it's all important. But none of it works if our families fall apart. None of it works. So a little while ago, I was saying to you that I go all over and I meet people who know my father and who were baptized by my father. And I suspect they'll be my children's experience in the years to come, right? And us more than my father, because my parents were missionaries in Latin America. And we've been all over the world. And it'd be gratifying to get to heaven and see people who've been baptized from our campaigns around the world. But more important than that, is seeing Jessica and Julian there. If I get to heaven and my children are not there, but all these people from Serbia, from Brazil, from Australia, from Papua New Guinea are there. First things first. First things first. So let me finish this way. I need to end now. Here's how to put first things first. Your big rocks are your values, the things that are most important to you. Time with God, time with your families, and work. And many times this is the most challenging with our pastors who have 10 churches and 15 churches, and with you guys who have so many committees, and you're here and you're there and you're everywhere. We still haven't written the final research of the church and the impact, ministry, occupational hazard of why so many of our children are not going to be in heaven because we are so busy doing so much other stuff. I'll say this much, just for whatever it's worth. When I was in the North American division, oh, by the way, until my children left home to go away to university at 18, I had never been away from home in all of their lives more than 2 weeks at a time, less than 4 times in their lifetime. I was away forget the phone. I want you to listen to this. Less than 4 times in my children's 0 to 18 years of age was I gone away from home for 2 weeks. Less than 4 times in the 18 years. That was part of my commitment. But I couldn't be gone from my family so much because I wasn't going to be there to influence them. And I still remember one of those 4 times that I was gone. I was speaking for camp meeting in Australia. I was in NAD, North American Division, and I was in Australia for about 12 days. And I still remember my children were, still in primary school. And my commitment was speaking to them every day. Didn't matter where I was in the world before they went to sleep. Pray with them. And these were the days before cell phones. But the conference president, Adrian Craig, he had a car phone. And we were driving in the middle of the day. Of course, there's a 15-hour difference between Australia and the United States. And I'd say to him, Adrian, my kids are about to go to sleep. I need to speak with them. And he'll pick up his car phone and give it to me. And I'll speak with them. I'm saying this to say connection. There's a lot of psychology. I don't have the time to tell you about it. We call it connectedness. And what it means to have that contact with your children, with your spouse. So your big rocks are your values, the things that are most important to you. Because they're also little rocks, the things that get in the way of being true to your values. What are the little rocks? Sometimes a lot of the meetings we have are little rocks. Sometimes we have more meetings than we need, you know? It's not a good thing to say at a union, but sometimes we have more meetings than we need. Sometimes we spend more time on internet than we need to. Less time praying, less time in God's Word. So you decide on your priorities. You're big people. I just want to throw it out at you and challenge you this morning. So how do you put your marriage and family first? Spend one-on-one bonding time. Do you spend time with your children? And by the way, especially in the 21st century, the more children you have, the more challenging that becomes, because you don't have the time to spend one-on-one time, bonding time with each of these children. So that be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, that's not for you. That was for Adam and Eve. There were no people then. There were no people then. Ellen White is very clear that we should not have any more children than we can afford. And that's much more than just money. That's time. Time is a precious commodity. Precious. If we have no time, we have no life. So when we give our time, we give our life. So spend one-on-one and plan on weekly time together. Those of you who've been married for a long time, don't take your spouse for granted. Don't take it for granted that you're going to come home and they're going to have dinner for you. Don't take them for granted. You need to keep making emotional deposits, building this relationship so that it's viable, so that it has currency, so that there is connection, so that there is a sense of worth. Yeah, we're together. So, and this is a big one. I don't know what you use this text for, but I want to use it in this context. Therefore, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, what is that? If you're a husband, if you're a wife, if you're a father, if you're a mother, whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. Do all to the glory of God. After all, Scripture says that when Jesus returns, he's going to ask you, where's that little flock I gave you? Ellen White says, family is our first mission field. We can't just have lip service about that. It has to be a matter of integrity, something that we live. Right now, I'm really happy that Joel is sitting here to my right, because he's not married yet. And I'm hoping that what I'm saying this morning is going to impact your life for the rest of your life when you get married. So you can have the kind of marriage and family that honors God. And that's for all the young people in the room as well. And so to the old ones, I challenge you, whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. So you need to ask yourself, this trip that I'm taking, do I need to take it? This extra day that I'm being away from my family, do I need to be away from my family? I tell you that when Elaine didn't work for me, I would not spend one additional hour anywhere, any place in the world without heading home as quickly as I could to get back to her, to get back to the children. When we travel, and even though our children are adults now, we try to get home as quickly as we can. We were in Budapest 2.5 weeks ago. After Serbia, 2 weeks in Serbia, we were 1 week in Budapest, in Hungary, doing one of these events. We were invited last year, because we did a piece after the conference that we had in Budapest. Some of you were there. We had a conference, women's, children, family ministries. People from all over the world came. And then Elaine and I did 2 days of lecturing for the community in Budapest, because our union director is one of the most famous marriage therapists in the city of Budapest. Dr. Gabor Mihalik. In fact, his PhD dissertation was on marriage stuff, and the book that he's written for premarital, all the churches in Budapest use. Not all the Adventist churches, all the churches. And he does therapy, family therapy, 2 days a week. So he invited all the people who come to his practice, and we spoke to them for 2 days. And he said, can you come back next year? Because the people wanted us to come back. He says, are you going to be in Central Europe? We said, we're in Serbia. Can you come after that? I said, no, it's our son's birthday the week after that. We can't come. I said, the only way we can come if it's our son decides he wants to come. I said, so I'll let you know. I'll send him an email, and if he says he will come, we will come. Our son says, sure, I'll come. So our son was there for a week. On that last Sabbath we were in Budapest, 3 weeks ago was his birthday, April 28th. The only reason we were in Budapest on April 28th, on our son's birthday, because he agreed to be there. He's now 28. He was 28 on the 28th. but he's not married. So we as his parents want him to know he is most important to us. We don't want to be on the other side of the world when it's his birthday because we got an invitation to go. We want to be home with him. Putting first things first. You're going to mess me up now. I want you to get messed up too. Gospel workers. Hey, we need to read these little red books, you know. We don't just have them for nothing. Nothing can excuse the minister for neglecting the inner circle for the larger circle outside. The spiritual welfare of his family comes first. Sorry, if you didn't know this before, know it now. We're talking about values. We're talking about principles. This is what Ellen White says. I was teaching in Romania 5 years ago. Pastors. And there were some wives there too. And I shared this quotation in the presentation that I was making. And a pastor's wife, a retired pastor's wife, came to me afterwards and said, how can you say that family is more important than ministry? I say, I'm not saying it. God is saying it. Ellen White is saying it. You believe in her as a prophet of God? I'm not saying it. Sometimes we think ministry. That's why I showed you that graphic earlier on of employment and family. Employment is always changing. Family is permanent. Are you with me? I hope that our coming here this week will revolutionize Kisumu, but more than that, revolutionize you as leaders of God's church in this part of the world. To have a new perspective when it comes on family and what God requires and how the church is only going to be strong when your families are strong. The spiritual welfare of his family comes first. Putting first things first. You know I'm at the end when I say this, right? Some of you are saying amen. He's going to shut up now. The promise of success. None of these things we can do by ourselves. None of these things. Everything we have, everything we do, it's all the Lord. I'm not in my position because I'm so smart or I'm so good. I'm in this position because God put me here. So are you. So are you. Let's quit believing our own press that we're so good and that's why we get to do this. No. It's a gift of God. We can only do it because of God. So, I want to challenge you to put first things first. I want to challenge you to put God first. I want to challenge you to put your families first. Don't sacrifice them for this church. I'm coming from world headquarters and I'm telling you, don't sacrifice your families for the church. The church is going to be all right. God will take care of the church. But he's going to hold you responsible for what you do with your families. The families of the church, especially of the ministry of the church, the most important resource that we have in this church. Let's not squander it. Let's put first things first. And when you're trying to apply this text, apply to that. I can do all things through Christ. I can do a better job at organizing. I could do a better job at planning. I could do a better job that's intentional about putting my family first. So, you notice that my conversation with you this morning has been a little different than at the church. This is personal. Your workers, your leaders, and God is counting on you to pay attention to the directive that we have so that the church can be all that God wants it to be. It's Satan's plan, just like he got Eve to wander away from Adam. It is his plan for us to move our eyes from the prize, and the prize is family. Okay? And we may have all kinds of excuses and reasons why, we're not paying as much attention and why we are apart from each other. Today, I want to challenge you. When we get to heaven, I'm going to look for you, and I hope you show up with your family. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you that you're so gracious, so good to us. And today, we come as broken vessels who need to be filled with the grace of God, the power of God, and the principles of God's word. I want to pray for every family in this room, every leader. We all have challenges, all of us. It's no perfect family because there are no perfect people. You certainly know we're not perfect. But we ask for your mercies today. We ask for your grace. And we ask for transforming power that we may leave this place with a new perspective of what we need to do to be in your will. Help us to live by our values. And as the message of 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, whether we eat or drink, whether we're a father, a mother, a husband or a wife, a son or a daughter, let us do all of that to the glory of God. Because only then, Ellen White says, when the character of God is reproduced in his people, that means living by these values, then you will come. And let me not forget, Lord, to pray this way, because I don't want anyone to leave here with a guilty conscience. Help us to remember that you are a forgiving God and a restoring God. And we ask for that today. We ask for that. And if any of our children are vacillating and wandering away, again, no guilt. Help us to remember that you are perfect, did nothing wrong, and a third of your children left you, decided to go the other way. So even now we ask for your grace and we ask for your power. In Jesus' name, amen. Erokamano. Good to be with you. God bless you.